Hello there. It's been a bit. Not as long as last time, though. It's getting dark. Since it gets dark at 5 o'clock now, which is awesome. Anyway, I wanted to hop on here today and discuss the situation with Kyle Tucker, Bichette in particular, and teams that are involved and the ripple effects. I'll start with, I guess I could toss in Pete Alonso and Cody Bellinger. So those four: Bellinger, Bregman, Alonso, Tucker, something like that. Bichette. So those five. Getting my thoughts in order. Starting with Bichette. I think that what the Blue Jays need is there's a level of continuity, but I also think there's a level of adding, in that whether it's the pitching or the offense, something needs to improve a little bit, at least, from this past season, because when you look at the underlying numbers and expected record, things like that, the Yankees and the Red Sox were just as good, if not better. And mind you, the Rays, maybe the Rays aren't serious anymore. I don't know. Maybe their window is past them of being somewhat competitive in the East. And honestly, who knows what the Orioles will do. But there's at least a chance one of those two will come back. And realistically, the Yankees will spend some, plus they have what they have already. And the Red Sox aren't really losing anyone like that, other than maybe Bregman, which he could be replaced, at least offensive production-wise. So I think it's almost, I don't know where Bichette would go and be, for lack of a better word, valued the way he is with the Blue Jays. A bit like Vladdy, and why I think he stayed. Obviously it's the money, but it's also the fact that it's their team. Someone like Springer is just kind of there for a bit. He'll be gone after next season anyway. Santander was terrible this year and is only there for a little while. That's like a 4-year deal at most, I think. Maybe 5 with that option or whatever, but he could probably be phased out, bought out, DFA'd, whatever. And yeah, offensively, it's their team. So to me, it only makes sense for him to go back to the Blue Jays. And then that brings us to Kyle Tucker, because he's the next one that is debatable. Well, obviously it's debatable, but the question becomes, let's just say there's 5 teams. The Astros aren't coming back. The Cubs aren't coming back. So it's the Yankees, Dodgers, Phillies, Giants, Blue Jays. Kind of outside the Tigers, the main protagonists in this video regarding all these players. I don't see the Phillies. I think the fit's there, but I just don't think I'm not going to say can afford him, but I think something would have to happen to clear a little bit of salary. Maybe not. Maybe they just go crazy and say, all right, well, this is the last chance. Let's get Kyle Tucker, and everything just gets blown up. Who knows? But they lose Ranger, and who else did they really lose? No one of note like that. I mean, maybe a bullpen piece or two, but they lose Ranger. That's not ideal. But if they bring in Tucker, right field's open, since Kepler was terrible and Castellanos is arguably even worse and costing $20 million. So they have to do something. They probably have to do something with Castellanos, or just view it as a sunk cost and just deal with it till the end of his contract, which I think is one more year. Kyle Tucker would make sense there. I just don't see it. So let's say we eliminate the Phillies. I think the best actual fit is the Giants because Yastrzemski's gone. Matos had a negative WAR in 2025. As he was playing right. Ramos is okay, I guess. Young-Hoo Lee isn't great. But what you could also do, and this is kind of in my hypotheticals or predictions, however you want to word it, is move Young-Hoo Lee to right and bring someone in for center. That would be a cheaper option, and then you could go address other positions in pitching, aka a closer and a starter at least. I think the Giants would be the best fit. I just don't see him going there. Talking about Tucker. Then we have the Yankees. So I would group the finalists, and again, this is going off of what people have been saying as well as fit. I think the fit that makes the least sense. See, it's questionable because I think you can make an argument for both the Yankees and the Blue Jays don't actually need them. Because even if Trent Grisham goes, the Yankees have Spencer Jones in the waiting. They have Jason Dominguez. And they can bring back Cody Bellinger. I think a better fit. Well, and then let's talk about the Blue Jays because that was the other one where it's kind of questionable. One of Anthony Santander and George Springer pretty much is playing right. Unless you put them at left and have Lucas just not be in there, which doesn't really make that much sense because I think he's a better defender than both of them. So one of those two is in right, one's DHing. Springer has a year left, so in theory it could be just drop Lucas or trade him and put one of them in left with Barger at third, Clement in second, Jimenez at short, and then maybe let Bo go. Or you bring back Bo and bring in Tucker, and then it's Bo at second, Jimenez at short, Barger and Clement, so kind of platoon / rotate / whatever at third, and then obviously Vladdy at first with one of those other guys, like I said, DHing, and Kirk behind the plate. I think that makes sense. I just don't see it as a break the bank type of need. I don't know. I think if you bring back Bo and actually get a top level starter, that makes a lot of sense considering Gossman's aging. Barrios probably you just see out his contract and then that's that. Maybe even try to trade him. Savage is young, hasn't thrown that many innings. Lauer, someone said, is going to be a free agent after this coming year anyway. So you have this question of how many guys are even going to be around. So to me, pitching is a place to look, especially with the starters on the market, which that's another video. So then that brings us to the Dodgers. I actually think this is the best fit. I think you put Tucker in right, you put Teo in left, you have Pages in center, you have Edman at second, you have Mookie at short, Freddie at first, Shohei DHing, and then I guess Muncy or whoever at third. Then you could have Rojas come back, play wherever. Ha-Seong Kim plays wherever. And then obviously Will Smith behind the plate with rushing. And then that's a sick lineup, even sicker than it was. You just won the World Series again. They don't really need that much pitching. Because a lot of what I'm thinking here is fit and pitching. Because with Tucker and the Yankees, you could put him in left where Bellinger was, which makes sense. And then don't bring back Bellinger. You go to the Mets or Phillies or whoever, or back to the Dodgers even. But I think you already had Bellinger and he'd be cheaper. I don't know. So that was a lot of talk about Tucker. I didn't mean to take that long. So to me, the obvious two fits would be Dodgers or Yankees with a slight preference to the Dodgers. And then just quickly going over Bellinger, like I just said, I see it as Yankees, Phillies, Mets, Dodgers. I don't really know where else he'd go. I'm pretty sure that the sensible thing would be to go back to the Yankees. If Ben Rice doesn't work, he could always play first, although he'd go back and obviously play left. They could then address center with Spencer Jones or Dominguez or whoever, or you could just move him in center and have the other one in left. Probably want to do that. And then going over to Bregman, because I think he's the last one, right? So I did Tucker, Bichette. Oh, Alonso too. All right, well, let's do Bregman. Let's do Bregman quickly. Again, my problem with the Phillies with Bregman, because I've seen that rumor, is where is Bohm going to go? Like, are you just going to trade him? If so, who would even want him? Because he's not great defensively at third. He doesn't really have the pop to play first like that. He only has a year left. He's not that cheap for what he is. So to me, the Phillies don't make that much sense. I think the Tigers make the most sense, but then you have the whole issue of if Gleyber Torres accepts the qualifying offer, and then you have Kevin McGonigal basically ready, plus the guys that are already there, Baez, McKinstry, Keith, obviously Torque at first. You have a number of guys in the outfield. Would they sign both and just say, all right, well, McGonigal, you can wait, have some guys be utility players or platoons, have both Bregman and Torres? It's a question mark. Then there's the Red Sox. Do they bring him back? Does he want to go back? Are they trying to actually pay money for players and not be cheap? Which brings me to Alonso. I guess the last option would be the Mets, and then you just move Vientos to first from third. Does that make sense? And lastly, Alonso. I think the sensible two would be the Mets and the good Lord, the Mets and the Red Sox. The Mets, to me, something has to change with the Mets. Like the Phillies, is going backwards, and that just isn't acceptable when they're spending that amount of money they're spending each year. So if you view Alonso as he's aging, he's right-handed, he only plays first at a subpar level anyway, and it's only probably going to get worse as he ages. The bat probably going to go eventually to some extent. Do you just let him go elsewhere? Does he go to the Red Sox? I like that fit. I think that they got rid of Devers, so they cleared up money there. They need a righty bat. They need some pop. Casas could either stay or be moved. They'd probably prefer to move Yoshida, because what value does he really bring anymore anyway, other than a singles hitter with the occasional double. So to me, I would say Tucker, to recap, and if it's a TLDR, Tucker to Dodgers, Bellinger back to the Yankees, Alonso to the Red Sox, Tigers hope Torres declines the qualifying offer and seeks a longer deal, because he's already kind of been messed about. So Torres leaves, Bregman comes into the Tigers, and then Bichette stays with the Blue Jays. Those would be my five. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think then the Mets can go big on a starting pitcher, which there's an obvious fit for that. That'll be another video, which I think some other people have talked about, but it makes too much sense. And then a second starter from another NL team that, again, I can discuss on another video, because this is not about pitching. It's a different video. The Yankees then would have the opportunity to spend on relief. which they've lost a couple guys, Weaver, Williams, and maybe a starter, since they've had guys injured like Garrett Cole and Heel and Schmidt, and then maybe another outfielder, since they'd be losing Grisham, and you don't know about Spencer Jones yet. Plus, if Spencer Jones is ready, you could always say, all right, well, if Rice isn't cutting it, or if you want Rice to catch, or just move Rice, however you want to do it, or Wells, then Bellinger can always play first. Or you can move Judge to first, and there's a lot of options there. So to me, that's what makes the most sense. I just recapped it all. Let me know what you guys think. And the next video will be some pitching. Peace.